Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I certainly appreciate you waiting for the new guy to have just a minute with you.
I too sat where you did.
right here. Thank you. And let me just say personally, for anybody that's concerned about your use of tax dollars, I've seen you sit on the back of an airplane with me in the lowest economy seat, and somehow you folded up those legs of yours and got them in that seat. So I hope the taxpayers appreciate that.
I fly coach. I always have.
Good. Also, a deep appreciation from my district and from the state of Utah for your attention to our needs there, for the difficult decisions that you've made, and much appreciation from my state. Let me just mention a couple things briefly to you, and then I'll be done. I was the mayor of my city of Provo, Utah for the last 8 years. The very first year as mayor, the Central Utah Water Project came through my city. They put a 60-inch pipeline from one end of the city to the other end of the city. None of that water was delivered to our city. It went up further north. But we tolerated and embraced that project because we know how critical it is to our valley and to the state of Utah. Now another arm of that project is going in that will help Provo. There was a $2.4 million gap, not huge, between what was appropriated and what was in your budget. And just wanted to see if you would take a look at that and see if there's a possibility of closing that gap so we can finish this just critical project for our valley.
Well, we funded $8 million. I know it's about $2 million short. And it goes back to, I think what Congress can help me with is transfer authority, because I'm holding books on a lot of projects that should be transferred over to the water districts themselves. Because again, the original intent on a lot of these projects was the small communities couldn't afford them. So we wanted to make sure the land was productive, so the federal government would come in, invest in it, and over the period of time, the water users would pay it off, and then title would be transferred at an appropriate time. We forgot about the title transfer at an appropriate time, and thus, when you look at it now, years later, decades later, we are holding on to a lot of assets that we're paying for that we should transfer over to the water districts and then focus on building new projects and being a good neighbor once again.
Would love to explore that when we have more time to see how I can be helpful with that. Thank you for your attention there. I'm fortunate to have the district with the iconic Arches National Park unit. It's an amazing asset. The state of Utah every once in a while wonders if we did the right thing by advertising these parks. We're loving them to death. The lines are long to get in. And the current park supervisor has worked very hard to try to come up with a plan, and currently is looking at a reservation system in the park. It won't surprise you to know that that's causing some consternation in Moab. And it's simply an ask to help us all make sure that we're exhausting every possibility and that we're trying to accommodate as many visitors as that park can appropriately handle. I learned just today that she was doing an economic development study, and that's really critical for that area to know what the impact would be of a reservation system. And then just the hope that we can continue to exhaust every possibility before we move to that reservation system to make sure that's the right thing there.
We certainly are looking at options. One of the options actually is going to a transporter on our maybe the top 10 parks. And a transporter is probably having Tesla or one of the zero emissions, because people love those. Design in Glacier Park like a red bus carrier, where we begin to limit the number of cars and then tie it into an app. So part of the problem with Zion is that if you have a bus system out there, they drop 70 people off at a trailhead. So your visitor experience is a clump of 70 people. So we're actually looking at an app system where you can tell whether a trail is red, yellow, or green to make sure the park experience that we all love is maintained. So we think that model may work, and we're evaluating what it means. But there's no doubt there's going to be more visitors to our park than we had this year.
Right.
That we're loving our parks to death. We have to address the backlog in maintenance and repair, and there's a capacity that is probably there, and we're at, or overcapacity at some parks. But it's about people management and making sure the visitor experience is sacred.
I think it would be fantastic if I can go back and tell the good people of Moab that we're looking at those types of options and at least considering technology and making that visitor experience valuable. There's, of your deficit, there's about $25 million backlog in arches. And although fees can't overcome all of your deficit, that is one situation where you may have the ability to come closer to that deficit if we could increase the number of people in that park.
Knowing Moab, I can bet they're going to like zero emissions.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, yeah. Thank you very much for your time.